All right. So again, we're going to be going over the common mistakes that I see people making that can affect, your gut. And so this is going to be especially for those of you who are brand new and you're trying to figure out how this entire process works. What you need to be doing. That's basically, what I want to talk about. And so the way I want to go about this is, um, let me start by sharing again my story so that you understand my perspective, because I believe that that perspective is really what's most important, and that's what I'm trying to transfer over to you. This is the type of understanding that I want you to have when it comes to understanding food, understanding your diet, and understanding what affects your microbiome. So my expertise has become, helping people optimize their microbiome to get more energy, sleep better, and feel better. And the way that I came about that was that in 2012, I was dealing with a lot of gut related issues myself. I had autoimmune conditions, leaky gut. I was tired all the time. I had a hard time falling asleep. I had brain fog. My hair was falling off, a laundry list of things that were going on. And then I had an epiphany moment. Okay, my epiphany came when I learned that 80% of your immune system is your gut flora. Okay, these are probiotics. These are things like yeast and bacteria. And the reason why this was such an epiphany for me was because I was teaching how to brew beer. And that's when it dawned on me that the same probiotics that we use to ferment all kinds of foods and beverages like beer, wine, sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, etc., these are the same probiotics that live in our gut. These are the same probiotics that we need in our gut. These are the same probiotics that make vitamins for us. They make hormones for us. And so this is when I started to understand that what I needed to do in order to fix my gut and really to improve my health overall was to optimize my microbiome, right? And so I started to take things that I learned from the brewing process, and these are the 5 things that I want you to pay attention to, because the things that I'm going to talk about, the reason why I'm able to see, okay, what a lot of people don't see here is because I'm looking at this through this lens where I filter everything through these 5 things. And it starts with paying attention to the quality of water, okay, the amount of minerals, pH, temperature, and then probiotics. Okay, what's the actual bacteria that is in the food or beverage, whatever it is that you are consuming, right? That's the lens that I'm looking at, right? Like everything I look at, I'm looking at it through that lens. And so that's what I want you to see. Okay, so first step, okay, the very first thing that I always teach people is water, right? And water is, it's important for a variety of reasons. The number one reason is because if you're looking to get more energy and you study the way that your mitochondria functions, your mitochondria is what produces energy in the body. Just like a regular AA battery, the way that it works is just nothing more than a hydrogen oxygen exchange. Okay, that's what's happening, right? Hydrogen, oxygen, that's what water is, H2O. So you can think of water as like that raw material that your body needs to create energy. It's one of the materials, one of the ingredients. So that's like first and foremost, that's one of the main reasons why that is important. Now, as a brewer, however, it's not just about water, right? It's about all these other aspects of water that I want you to look at. And it starts out with the quality of water, right? So one of the first lessons that I started to understand, and this is, part of what I'm writing in my book, Beer Diet Project, is, basically a brewing lesson that I learned that I translated over to health was, as a brewer, I will go online and look up our city water quality report. And that's where I would go in and see that our waters are basically treated with all sorts of things from, it's either chlorine or chloramine as the main treatment, but then there's a ton of contaminants that you might find in your water, whether it's fluoride, lead, and there's a ton that are not even tested for. Okay, so there's a ton of things that could be in your water that that could affect your microbiome, right? Because as a brewer, I would look at that and say, okay, I can't use this water to brew beer. And if I use that water, I have to either treat it or, do something, with it. And in my case, brewing beer, I basically opted for building my own water from scratch. I will basically take either a reverse osmosis system, or I will distill water, because distilled water is basically the cleanest water that you can have. Right now, I have a distilling machine, and this is where things can begin to, you know, the little details here is where people are starting to miss the mark. Okay, because when I say distilled water is the cleanest water, what begins to happen is that some people hear that part. It's like, okay, I need to go get distilled water. Now they go to the store and they buy a gallon of distilled water. But hear me out, because this is important. I have a distilling water machine. It's a stainless steel machine, and it basically steams water, and then that condenses into a glass container. So the water does not come into contact with plastic. What is important to understand here is that water, when it's distilled, it has nothing. It has no minerals. It has nothing. That water is clean and it's powerful. It's powerful because I think of it as being empty. It has like the most amount of, I will call it like attractiveness, like magnetic power, if you will. Like it basically, anything that comes into contact with that water, distilled water, is just going to want to get soaked in and, sucked into the water, and basically become, it, dissolve into the water. So if you're going to the store and you're buying distilled water and it's in a plastic gallon, what's happening there is that the plastic is leaching into the water, and now you're drinking plastic in your water. Okay, and that basically makes your water acidic, right? So again, we're looking at the quality of water, minerals, pH. Okay, plastics make water acidic, right? So I see a lot of people that are drinking water out of plastic bottles. And this is where, this is what begins to separate me from other people. Okay, because the first thing that I try to teach is like, hey, you got to get the quantity of the water that you drink right, but then you also have to pay attention to the quality of water, right? And so I think that's a big one, because I just had, there's been multiple people. Okay, there's been multiple people that have actually been doing this, making this mistake of either buying distilled water from a plastic gallon, or also like drinking water out of plastic bottles, in which case you're drinking acidic water. And so that's affecting your gut, because you're basically acidifying, and not in a good way. Okay, because, and these are the things that I wish that I had a simpler way to, explain it. But some of these things, honestly, you're just going to have to learn them, either through experience or through repetition. Okay, because just because you're drinking something acidic doesn't mean that it's bad for you, right? Kombucha is acidic, raw apple cider vinegar is acidic, lemon water is acidic, but all of these three, acids are actually good for cleaning, right? And there's different uses for them. So that's separate, okay? So don't focus in on the acidic part of it. Focus in on the part of it's acidic coming from plastic, but it's the plastic that is toxic. Okay, that's the main worry. It's not so much the acidity of it, but it's the toxicity of plastic going into your body. All right, so that's basically the kind of stuff that you need to start to pay attention to. The second thing that I've been seeing people, make a mistake on is not focusing on minerals and vitamin D enough. Okay, I know that there's a lot of supplements that I may be recommending for cleaning purposes, but water, minerals, and vitamin D is the foundation to everything. Minerals, especially magnesium and vitamin D, strengthen your immune system. And this is what allows your body to uptake nutrients. This is what allows your body to digest food better. And so if you're not using enough, minerals and vitamin D, and by vitamin D, I'm talking about fermented cod liver oil with butter oil. That's where you get the natural source of vitamin D. I'm seeing people that, I don't know if if they're afraid to take it, which, that seems to be the case in most situations. But that's why, like, I'm trying to convey to you that these are the two things that you should not be afraid of. And if, if anything, these are the things that you want to go hard on. Like magnesium, the only thing about magnesium that you got to worry about is two things. One is it's super bitter, right? So it's really going to depend on your taste. Now, depending on what kind of gut related issues you have, because not everyone has the same gut related issues, depending on what you have, overdoing magnesium, what can do is that it may have a laxative effect. Okay, and that's not necessarily going to be too much of a bad thing with this type of magnesium, but obviously you don't want to be putting yourself through that. The vitamin D, that's the other one where I've made a couple of videos actually where I've shown myself taking up to 10 capsules. I mean, I've taken up to 20 capsules of vitamin D. And, this is the fermented cod liver oil. And what I try to tell people with that is that, to me, fermented cod liver oil is not a supplement. It's food. It's a traditional food. It's fermented cod liver oil. It's what people in the northern regions of the world that don't have as much access to sun, that's where they get their vitamin D from. Okay, this is ancient nutrition. This is ancient medicine. This is the kind of stuff that I'm trying to teach. When I say, Beer Diet Project is about how I'm using the ancient wisdom of fermentation to optimize your microbiome to get more energy, sleep better, and feel better. This is one of those topics. It's fermented cod liver oil. You're going to notice, the things around my kitchen, there's a lot of things that are fermented from, things from like kombucha, sauerkraut, the probiotics that I make, that I show you guys, all of that stuff. Everything has to do with fermentation because that's what is going to help you restructure your gut flora. So don't be afraid of the minerals or the vitamin D. Okay. Now, to piggyback on that, your first goal, okay, besides hydrating, because I think I beat that horse enough, your next step after hydrating is vitamin D. Okay, you gotta raise your levels of vitamin D, right? All of your gut related issues. I've been seeing people posting about breaking out into hives and things like that. That's what I had. All of those issues are basically your inability to digest proteins and or get rid of proteins. And for that, that's what you need a strong immune system for, right? So the way that I remember experiencing it, because I used to not be able to digest protein. I used to not be able to really digest, meat and stuff like that. So like the current diet that I'm on, I could not have done that when I started. I had to restructure my gut flora to get to where I'm at today. Back then, if I were to eat that, I would get different things from, like, sometimes I would get like sharp pain in my stomach. Other times I'd just be like gassy, bubbly, or my belly would just like blow up, kind of like if someone's pumping air inside of me. And there's a lot of mucin being built up, and mucin is basically this mucus-like substance. And so what happens is when you eat protein and your body can't digest it, it can't break it down, that's an undigested protein. If you have leaky gut, that means that, think of your intestine as being a hole, and if that opens up, right, that's leaky gut. That's why they call it leaky, because now you have a bigger particle of food that can go through, which that's what basically makes that undigested protein. So now you have these undigested proteins going through your body, and that's what your body's basically trying to attack. The other source of undigested proteins is from your gut flora. Okay. The one thing that, and again, these are things that to me, they just make a lot of sense. So I want to make sure that you understand what I understand, which is your gut flora, right? If you have bad bacteria, both good and bad bacteria, the way that these, bacteria eat, they don't have teeth. Okay. What they do is they release digestive enzymes, right? So the problem is that, friendly bacteria, like probiotics, the good bacteria, those enzymes are good, okay, because they digest food for you. They make nutrients, they make hormones for you. Like, that's why they're good. The bad bacteria, they release digestive enzymes. And the reason why those are bad is because they don't make nutrients for you. They create toxicity. And all that an enzyme is, it's basically a type of protein. So really what's happening is if you have bad bacteria in your gut, if they start to release enzymes to break down food or things like that, all of those enzymes can end up in different parts of your body. And that's where, like, if you start to see like those rashes, or like, when I broke out into hives, that's where that comes from, is all of these enzymes going throughout your body, and your body basically trying to attack and break down these bad enzymes. This is what happens with, people that have either thyroid peroxidase antibodies, or thyroid antiglobulin antibodies. That's basically what's happening, is your thyroid is being attacked by these enzymes, and then your body's trying to attack these enzymes, and like that's the war that's happening in there, right? And all of that, again, really at the end, it falls back into your gut. And this is what I this was the biggest lesson that I learned, guys, that when I stopped focusing on trying to fix my thyroid and started focusing on fixing my gut, my issues just magically seem to have taken care of themselves, because health begins in your gut. Okay, 80% of your immune system is your gut flora, right? So with all of that being said, some of the mistakes that I'm seeing people make is that your diet is not being catered towards creating and raising your levels of vitamin D. Okay, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. Um, if you look at the way that fermented cod liver oil is made, is basically you need to have a salt-like, brine solution. Um, there should be little to no fermentable carbohydrates, and that's basically what ferments, these fats and these oils. And these fats are basically what carry vitamins A, D, E, and K, right? They're fat soluble. So I'm seeing a lot of people for breakfast, if you're eating things like oatmeal, if you're eating, things like cereal, or, any kind of like carbohydrate, you're basically reducing, your ability to make vitamin D. And so one of the things that I'm hoping for people to see and start to understand is the importance of fats in your diet, which is the other common mistake. Is there's a lot of people that still don't understand what is a good healthy fat for you versus what is not a good healthy fat for you. And this kind of falls back into, you got to understand food, where it comes from. I'll give you a couple of examples, like condiments. Okay, a lot of people don't know, but ketchup. All right, most people, the way that they think of ketchup, the way that they know ketchup, is the modern day version, which is basically made with high fructose corn syrup, vinegar, and conventional tomatoes, right? And so that's basically what they're buying. That's what they know of as ketchup. But there's very few people that know that real ketchup, okay, the way that ketchup is actually made is with heirloom tomatoes, and it's actually lacto fermented. It's a fermented food. There should be no vinegar, and definitely no high fructose corn syrup. And again, it goes back to understanding fermented foods, right? This is a traditional food. Mayo is the other, condiment, where, real mayo, same thing. It's made with eggs, pasture raised, and there's really not like a whole lot of ingredients. And so when you see, vegetable oils, like, and some of these are made with like oils and eggs and things like that, you got to ask yourself, okay, vegetable oils like safflower oil, canola oil, sunflower seed oil, corn oil, there's a bunch of these. They're high in polyunsaturated fats, but more important than that, what you have to understand is you have to go back to the source of the food. And what you have to understand about these vegetable oils, right? There was a huge press, okay? There was a huge push towards trying to make these vegetable oils sound healthy, right? Because they became commercialized, okay? Understand that food industry it's an industry, it's a business. And when you look at the way that safflower and some of these other vegetables are grown, they're grown with only three minerals: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And again, if we look at what affects our gut flora, is water, minerals, pH, temperature, and bacteria, right? So if you're eating foods that are basically grown in soils that are depleted of minerals that only have NPK, that food is basically demineralized and it's essentially toxic for your body. It's hard to digest because now your body needs to source up minerals, right? And your body is basically water with minerals, right? So if you're eating foods that don't have minerals in them, your body needs to basically suck water out of itself, take it to your gut so that it can break down and try to digest these foods. So you're becoming dehydrated, right? So now you're starting with that, you can kind of start to understand why hydration is so important. Like, this is why it makes so much sense to me that most of the people that have gut issues, one of the first problems that they have is dehydration. Like, that's the most basic thing. And the other thing with hydration is to understand that drinking water one day is not going to hydrate you. Okay, it's going to take weeks. All right, a good timeline to shoot for, it's about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how bad you are dehydrated, right? So don't think of this as, something you're going to do in a day or a week or even 2 weeks, right? You got to shoot for like 4 to 6 weeks before you start to notice the effects of hydration. And most importantly, remember that it's not about doing it for 6 weeks. It's about creating a habit for a lifetime. Okay, I've been doing this for 7 years, and the reason why I've been able to do and get the results that I'm getting is because that's a habit for me. It's something that I do every single day without fail. Okay, and that's the point that you want to get to. So those are some of the more common mistakes that I'm seeing. And then again, moving from breakfast, moving away from breakfast, just the foods in general that that I'm seeing people post. Again, it kind of goes back to you have to understand, and you know what, I think I'm gonna illustrate this one, because I think if you can get this part right, if you can actually understand this one here, this is going to help you see what I see when it comes to the foods that you're eating. So the biggest problem that I see when you have bad bacteria, okay, in your gut, right? This is what, to me, like, this is my definition. Okay, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm a beer brewer, so my definition from a brewing standpoint, bad bacteria, autoimmune conditions, that's what that is having bad bacteria. It's like a spoiled batch of beer. It's, you either have parasite, virus, a bad bacteria like H. pylori, viruses, the common ones are like Epstein-Barr virus, there's a ton of these different things, but one of the ones that is very common, okay, very common to the point where I can almost guarantee that 9 out of 10 people watching this have this, is basically yeast overgrowth, right? Yeast candida and yeast albicans. Yeast, okay, I'm gonna say candida. Okay, this is the bad kind of yeast, all right? Remember, that's not to be confused with brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast is a good type of yeast. It's a probiotic. This is what makes B vitamins for you. Yeast candida doesn't make vitamins for you. It just steals nutrients from you, and it basically makes creates a lot of toxicity. And in my experience, what I found is that one of the main reasons why I had such a hard time digesting protein was because of these little suckers right here. So until you get rid of these, it's going to be hard to digest, a lot of food. And so the mistake that I see people make is that the foods that they're eating are feeding the yeast candida. Okay. And some of these foods, this is where there's a lot of confusion with a lot of people. And I understand that, if you don't see what I see, if you don't have this kind of understanding and knowledge, I can see why you may not understand that, foods like oatmeal, starchy vegetables, basically just about anything that's, carbohydrate related, all of this stuff, okay, like, I don't think that oatmeal is bad for you. Right now, number one, I think that there are better oatmeals than others. Like if you're buying rolled oats, those are not as good as if you buy steel cut oat and you actually soak them overnight, because you're supposed to soak grains. You're supposed to remove the anti-nutrients, right? This is where understanding fermentation, soaking, sprouting, and all these other things really come in handy. But what's most important to understand is that things like oatmeal or starchy vegetables and things like that, all of these carbohydrates, essentially, when digested, they become sugar. And that sugar, it's what's feeding your yeast candida, right? So what I hope that you get out of this, okay, I hope that you start to look at your macros, as far as, you know, you're eating carbs, you're eating protein, and then there's fat. And then as far as fat, obviously there's good fats and there's bad fats. What I hope that you get out of this, my process, okay, here's what I did, all right? This is where you take notes, because this is basically how I changed my diet. And again, the way that I changed it to researching my gut flora, it's different than what I do now. So I'm giving you what I did, that helped me out. Okay, it's not what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing right now, I'm eating a little bit more protein. But what I did in the beginning to help me get rid of yeast was to make my diet primarily healthy fats, and then just a little bit, if any, carbs, and then a good amount of protein. Right. So this is kind of like the ratio, I guess, if you will. So it's primarily fat and a little bit, if anything. And I mean, there was a period of time where I actually completely eliminated carbs, and protein was, very minimum, coming from like hemp seeds, spirulina, so those things. And like spirulina doesn't really have protein; it has amino acids, so it's already, doesn't need to be digested. But that's basically what my source was, and the reason for it is because that ketogenic type of diet is what allowed me to essentially starve out the yeast and reduce that population. Okay, so this is why, like, as you start to look at your diet, right? If you're eating, fruit, like fruit is not necessarily bad for you. Like I don't think fruit is bad for you, but if you have yeast candida, if you have yeast albicans and some of these other ones, which is very likely if you're developing hives and these rashes and you have digestive issues, it's very likely you have it. That's where fruit all of a sudden becomes a no-no in your diet, because that's going to be feeding the bad yeast, right? So again, this is basically the kind of stuff that I see that I'm noticing just a lot of people don't see. And this is, again, one of the main reasons why I realized that there was a need for me to, make myself available to guide people one-on-one, because I see things that other people just don't see. Okay, my understanding on this, on digestion, on your gut microbiome and all of that is, it's different. I have a unique perspective, because of my background. So I posted a post. It's on the announcements inside of the group. If you want to work with me directly one-on-one, go check out that post and reach out. I'm going to be opening up spots for the month of June. This week I'm going to be super busy, so I'm gonna extend the enrollment period until next week. So make sure that you reach out, and if you want to work with me one-on-one, we can set up a time. Sometime next week. Most of the spots are already booked up for this week. But next week I'm going to be opening up my calendar for anyone that wants to work with me directly one-on-one, and basically avoid a lot of these mistakes that I'm seeing. So that's all that I wanted to share with you guys today. Let me go into the group and read your comments. If you guys have any questions about what I just covered, feel free to ask now. So let's see here. Hello, Susan. Cindy, hello. Good tips. You have amazing skin. Thank you. It's just hydration. It's all it is. It's hydration, a lot of good healthy fats. Um, Speaking of toxicity and putting toxic stuff in your body, something that I haven't really touched on much is products that you use, like body lotion, shampoo, toothpaste, and all these things. Those are like a huge source of toxic stuff going into your body. And so oftentimes people ask me, like, what do I use as far as for my skin and stuff like that. I use either coconut oil, I have olive oil, or cacao butter, right? Those are basically like the things that I use. As of late, I've been using a lot of olive oil. So, like the good olive oil that you would normally, you know, drink or put on your salads and stuff like that. That's what I use on my skin, because that's one of like my beliefs. Because understand that whatever you put on your skin absorbs, and that goes into your body, right? So um, another thing that I haven't really talked much about is another way to mineralize is, this same ionic magnesium. Um, I have a magnesium where, you can put it directly on your skin. You can just rub this oil and just rub it into your skin, and that basically mineralizes you. And that's actually something that, I'm going to be talking about that, like, later down in the programs, especially when I start talking more about detoxing. Because as you guys start to lose weight, which that's what happens when you detox, your body has no need for body fat. And so one of the things that you're going to want to do is basically do things like that, where you got to clean out your skin and mineralize it so that it tightens up. Otherwise, you're going to have loose skin, right? So there's a lot of these things that that you're just going to have to like learn as you go on. And again, I'm working on like putting together like a lot of these programs, which is part of what I'm going to be doing in the in my coaching programs. Some of the training calls that I'm going to be doing are going to be exactly on that kind of stuff, as I start working with more people that are going through the detox phase. Be sharing more things like that, where like, hey, now that you're going through this phase, here are some things that you might want to pay attention to. So I'm excited to share some of those. I do have a different type of magnesium. It's very similar, magnesium hexahydrate, but it's basically transdermal, and that's basically how you rub it in. And that one is a pretty cool one, because when you do like the skin cleaning, um, you'll go through this experience. So I'll just warn you from now, like, that magnesium is it's strong, right? And magnesium, it's conductive. Okay, conductive meaning like it pulls electricity, and you'll feel, because when you start to clean out your skin, right, when you remove dirt and grime, you're going to find like there's all these cuts and all these um, they're kind of like cuts, I guess is kind of like what I call them. And it almost feels like it stings, right? So when you do that and you find that it stings, trust me, like, that's good, because it's healing your skin, and it means that you need it most. But anyway, so that's going to be for later on down the road. And that's pretty much it. So, all right, if you guys don't have any more questions, then that's all that I've got for today. So hopefully this video helps you out. Hopefully it cleared out, some of these mistakes that I'm seeing. Don't feel bad if you're making these mistakes. Just understand that it may take some time to learn what I'm teaching. But hopefully by me reminding you that, hey, you're looking at water, minerals, pH, temperature, and bacteria with everything that you look at, right? Every food that you buy, you got to ask yourself, where did this come from? Okay, if it's a plant, if it's, whatever it is, if it's an egg, was the chicken raised in good soil with the grass that has, was grown in soil that had good water, minerals, pH, temperature, bacteria, like all that kind of stuff. Dairy products, your beef, your fruits, everything that you're buying, you got to look at it through that filter, and that's how you're going to know if it's good for you or if it's not. So thank you so much for being here. Hope you guys got a ton of value from today, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a great night. You too, Susan. Thank you.